The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Easy Money New England.
Oh, can somebody help us here?
We can, because we are real estate and mortgage professionals.
Where you go?
It says come in and browse.
That's right. Come on in, listen up and learn.
How long do you intend to browse?
In a short period of time, our panel will teach you some tricks that might make your house buying
You
easier.
didn't ask her how long she intends to browse.
You might not be looking for a mortgage today, but we'll get you ready.
You don't look like browsers.
Are you looking?
No, what do browsers look like?
Yeah, maybe I'm half browse.
On his father's side.
This is Easy Money New England
Let's show the lady we're browsers.
with your host, Brian D'Amico.
Look at us, we're browsers. One more word out of you and he gets it, all right?
Hello, and welcome to another edition of our show, Easy Money New England, where every week we bring you money-making tips, well, money-making opportunities, or money-saving tips, all in the areas of real estate. And today we have a very special guest, Dwight Kay from Kay Properties and Investments, LLC, which is a real estate wealth advisory firm that specializes in Delaware Statutory Trusts, 1031 replacement properties. Dwight Kay started his career as a commercial real estate professional working for a large national brokerage. From there, he entered the securitized real estate world as a due diligence analyst and successfully obtained his Series 7.22 and 63 securities licenses. Through steady growth and specialization in the DST 1031 marketplace, they have grown to be one of the largest 1031 DST providers in the country. So without further ado, Dwight, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me.
So, Dwight, I've been telling everybody like a crazed person, hey, have you ever heard of DSTs? You ever heard of DSTs? So, Dwight, what is a DST?
Sure, DST, it's a trust, a Delaware Statutory Trust, and it's essentially an entity used to hold title to assets. And you can, a lot of various mutual funds and real estate investment trusts, if you go look at their formation documents, they are actually DST, Delaware Statutory Trust. So a lot of people may be invested in DSTs without actually knowing it. The DST that we specialize with in at K Properties is the DST that holds title to investment real estate. And what happened was in 2004, the IRS issued a revenue ruling. It was Revenue Ruling 2004-86, which stated that a properly structured Delaware statutory trust that holds title to investment real estate will be considered like kind for the purposes of a 1031 exchange. So DST, again, it's an entity used to hold title to assets. We specialize in real estate and 1031 exchange properties. So our DSTs hold title to investment real estate. Could be a 300-unit apartment building, could be a long-term net leased building to a large Fortune 500 company, could be a medical office building. Any type of investment real estate can be held in a DST, and then from there, investors own a portion of that DST, which means that they own a portion of the building inside of that DST. So it works for 1031 exchange. The IRS has blessed it with the revenue ruling, and people are using them for 1031 replacement properties as well as for direct cash investments. Now,
A DST, it isn't for anybody out there. There's some specific. That was a tough one, Ed. Specific.
Yeah, that's easy for you to say.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, it's not for everybody, right? So what is the classification that someone has to have to actually invest in one of these?
Sure. So to invest in a DST, you have to be what's considered an accredited investor. And accredited investor is basically an investor that has a net worth of greater than $1 million, excluding their primary residence. That's the most widely used term and definition for accredited investor. And so there's some other ways that you can qualify as an accredited investor, but most people it's a net worth of greater than $1 million, excluding your primary residence. So you can't count your home in there.
Well, if you own a lot of property and you want to basically cash out of these high values today, there's a good chance that you are accredited because of the value that your property holds today, and you could exchange it to what's called a DST. And, back to the 1031 exchange, it's pretty interesting that you can exchange property that has increased value, and a lot of people, they just don't know what to do. They say, all right, well, I bought this place for $250,000. Years later, it's worth $1 million. How can I get, just because I sell it, what am I going to do with the money? I mean, there's no real good opportunities buying around here right now. So this is a great opportunity to kind of get a return on your investment more at that $1 million level than at that 250 level. So what type
That's right.
So what type of returns do you tend to see, and what types of properties tend to do better than others? Like what classes of property?
Sure. Yeah. The DSTs, the properties inside of them are, it's investment real estate, and this is, as you said, maybe a bit of a peaky time in the real estate market, and so the returns. It's important to note that this is properties that are bought in today's market. So that's the problem with the 1031 exchange. If you sell high, you've got to buy high.
Right.
If you sell low, you can buy low with the 1031. So for our clients, it's really a matter of changing their lifestyle, where instead of having to deal with the tenants, the toilets, the trash, dealing with the headaches of owning apartments and commercial properties, they're able to do a 1031 exchange, defer their capital gains taxes, their state capital gains, federal capital gains tax, depreciation recapture tax, as well as the Medicare surtax, defer all of that and keep their equity working for them. So instead of, that property they bought for $250,000 and, sold for $1 million, instead of writing a giant check to Uncle Sam and the constituents there, they're able to defer it all, reinvest that full $1 million through a 1031 exchange, and it's a lifestyle change. So instead of owning and operating that property themselves, they're able to have professional, quality managers that are taking care of the day-to-day. And these oftentimes will be the same managers, property managers in the case of apartment buildings, that run large institutional portfolios for the various institutions out there. So same property managers are now taking care of your investment instead of you getting that call on Thanksgiving. And so at the end of the day, our clients, they want a lifestyle change and they want to diversify. Real estate has risks. Same for DSTs. There's no guarantees for appreciation, no guarantees for returns in the real estate you own in your own towns and cities and neighborhoods. Same with DSTs. There's no guarantees at all. But what we'll do is that client that has that $1 million of equity coming out of one property, maybe it's a 2, 3, 4, 5 unit apartment building or a small commercial building, that $1 million can now go into a portfolio where there's, own an interest in, 1,000 apartment units spread across the country, 15 different single tenant net lease properties spread across the country, 2 or 3 or 4 large medical office buildings leased to large hospital systems across the country. So no guarantees in real estate, and there is risk with DSTs just like there is with real estate, but we're able to put together a diversified portfolio of replacement where, the minimums are $100,000 on our DSTs typically. And so we can really build a portfolio, or the client can build their portfolio to get them out of that active management, dealing with the tenants, the toilets, and the trash, and be diversified, all the while utilizing the 1031 exchange for full tax deferral.
And when you talk about being diversified, you're diversified with the types of property, but you're also even more further diversified because of the geographics that you're actually throwing into the mix. So if you had...
That's right.
Yeah, so if you had, if someone wanted to exchange into, say, a CVS in this area, well, it's one big box. If they were to move out, what's going to happen? Whereas you can get into another DST that may have 8 CVSs or some Walgreens mixed in. It's a little diversification. Plus, it's all different parts of the country, which is like 2 levels of diversification in the way I was looking at it.
Absolutely. So, yeah, you have geographic diversification. You've got asset class diversification. So instead of just buying one CVS, you're able to buy a piece of a CVS, a piece of apartment building, a piece of a medical office building, a piece of a industrial building. So asset class diversification, geographic diversification, and then also tenant diversification. A lot of people are looking at their 1031 going, and their CPA and the broker tell them about, buy a triple net. And they're looking at a Taco Bell or a KFC, and they're looking at a lot of concentration risk, putting a large amount of equity into one single property. And net leases can be really good, but we all know there's risks with real estate, and tenants do go bankrupt. Let's look at, Blockbuster Video or Hollywood Video or Borders Bookstore or Circuit City or the myriad of retailers that have gone bankrupt. And so we want to be really careful in terms of the types of tenants that we select, but also the beauty with the DST is that diversification aspect, so you get tenant diversification. And, diversification, we're really careful to make sure our clients know it doesn't protect against losses and guarantee against losses, but it's, in our opinion, the thing that makes the most sense for many of our investors.
As you're talking about risks, though, way back in the day, as we're going through the due diligence phase, everyone says, oh, it's terrible, blah, 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 blah. But they were really talking about tenants in common, and there's a big difference between tenants in common versus a DST. Can you explain the big difference between the two models? Because obviously, not obviously for most of the listenings, but the TIC community is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it is a different ballgame, but I would say that, we have clients that invested in TICs that did very, very well, even through the recession. They did very well in those TICs. And, with real estate, whether you're a pension fund, foreign investor, an endowment fund, a real estate investment trust traded on the public, stock exchange, on New York Stock Exchange, a tenant in common, a DST, those are just, ownership groups. It's a way to hold title to real estate, these various entities. And so it's really about what you're buying, what is the property, what's the real estate, and how you're financing it. A lot of tenant in common investors gravitated towards the ultra higher, the projections were, very enticing because they were buying hotels, and the hotels maybe had a 70% loan on it. They were buying senior care that maybe had a 60-65% loan on it. And the risk with those asset classes, because it's not just the real estate, it's also the operating business of the senior care center facility, operating business of the hotel, the regulatory shifts in laws, et cetera, with the senior care facilities that can really make those asset classes much higher risk, and the market deems them higher risk because of the way they're traded. And so whether you're a tenant in common owner, investor, or a public REIT, if you buy a bad asset and put a large amount of debt with a balloon mortgage, and then we have the greatest recession since, the Great Depression in 2009, 10, 11, you're probably going to have problems. And so it's not the structure that we've had clients that did very well in TICs, and we sometimes will use the TIC structure in certain circumstances. But the DST, the reason why we like that structure for our offerings, the majority of our offerings, is because you're looking at the DST affords you more diversification, because you can have up to typically about 499 investors per DST. It ends up only being about 50 or so. But with the old, and that brings the minimum investments down to $100,000. The old tenant common structure, you can only have 35 owners. And so a lot of the minimum investments for a tenant common was $500,000, $1 million, sometimes more. And so that, again, meant that people were over concentrating a large portion of their net worth into one property. Where with the DST, if you have $1 million, you're not just getting one or two different interests. We can help the client choose a portfolio of properties where they're in, 4, 5, or 6 different DSTs, $100,000 to $200,000 a piece, and get that diversification. Another thing that the problem with the tenant in common structure is you have to have a unanimous consent amongst the investors to make any major decisions.
And that's where I can see the problems lie with the TIC. I can't even get a consensus in my household, never mind a bunch of investors.
That's right. If we all had to decide the same thing we're going to eat for lunch today, we'd probably have a problem, right?
Exactly.
Let alone decide, what we're going to do with a $50 million asset. And so the DST, the trustee, which is typically an affiliate of the sponsor company or the asset manager of the property, they're the one making the major decisions. And so you don't have a rogue investor like in certain tenant in common situations where the rogue investor would dig his heels into the ground or her heels into the ground and delay a sale, and it could be, disastrous for all the other investors. So we like the DST better, but again, we want to make sure that what we buy and what properties are in the DST are appropriate. We're not chasing after higher potential returns, going for the higher risk asset classes, staying away from those hotels, those senior care facilities, higher risk asset classes, and then also being very cognizant of the amount of financing on these properties. A lot of 1031 investors are paid off. They're free and clear on their investments. They don't have to take on more debt per the 1031 exchange rules. A lot of our DST properties are all cash debt free, where we don't have an ounce of leverage from a lender. And so we can never have a lender foreclosure because we don't have a lender. For those investors that have to replace debt because the 1031 IRS rules of purchasing equal or greater value, we do have DSTs that have financing on them. But for investors that don't have to take on debt, we strongly encourage you consider, using the all cash debt free DSTs if you want to have a lower risk profile when investing in real estate.
So you'd be minimizing the risk on any type of foreclosure or calling of notes or having to refinance. Does that bring you a different level of return because there's less risk, or is it just safer all around?
Well, you'd be surprised. The return, oftentimes with the debt-free properties, the projected cash flow can be potentially higher because there's no debt service, and especially as rates are creeping up, it's really eating into returns and less of a positive arbitrage scenario for investors. So the debt-free properties, we're really not, sacrificing much in terms of income, but we're really lowering the amount of risk that the investors have by staying debt-free. There's still risk. You can lose all your money investing in real estate, debt-free real estate or not. But we think that the greatest risk, and that's what we saw, in 2009, 10, 11, 12, were the properties that were, the investors got wiped out, were ones that had heavy mortgages, large balloon mortgages, which most commercial mortgages are, 5 or 10 year balloons. And so if the note's coming due at the wrong time, you're in a really tough spot where if you had owned your property, even if you had bought a property in 2005 at the peak of the market, paid way too much for it, but you did it debt-free, and then the recession hit a few years later, rents may drop, rents go down, cash flow goes down. But today, in 2018, that property is probably worth more than it was in 2005 when you bought it. It's having that staying power. So we're really big proponents of staying all cash debt-free when we can. But a large amount of our clients do have to replace debt. So we have DSTs that do have financing in place, which is non-recourse financing.
And, if I'm listening right now, I'm driving around or I'm listening to the podcast, what types of returns can you see? Is it 4%? Is it 8%? What type of returns are you seeing out there?
Unfortunately, due to some regulatory rules and regulations that are out there, this is securitized real estate. And so we've got when you buy a DST, you get a private placement memorandum that goes all into the business plan and the risk factors. So unfortunately, because of some of these regulations and some of the ways they're interpreted, we're really not allowed to get into it. But I can say it's very similar to, what you're seeing if you're going out there buying, higher quality real estate. Some people will come to us and say, hey, I just got this crazy return. We're like, well, that's because you just bought this old gas station leased to some guy on a sale leaseback, and it's just way higher risk. So for higher quality real estate, it's very similar.
Yep.
But unfortunately, I'm not allowed to dive into that, Brian.
Can I ask some dumb guy questions?
Go ahead, Ed.
All right. So, Dwight, if I'm interested in this, you say 100,000. So, do you have to do some sort of qualification? Get information from me as to my other investments?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ed. So basically, you reach out to us. You can go on our website, and you'll basically sign up. You'll talk with one of our representatives. Our team members, many of them are licensed in all 50 states, so we work with clients all throughout the country. But we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you about your goals, your objectives, what you've done in the past. We'll walk through, risks of investing in real estate. And once we, are able to get to know you better, then we can kind of show you, hey, here's what we have that may make sense for you, right? And we kind of walk you through that whole process. And, we, again, for 1031 investors as well as for cash investors.
So is Is the trust something that has, a lifetime to it? Does it get dissolved at some point? And, how do
Sure.
I get my investments? Is it, a quarterly, a yearly payment, or it's at the end when the trust
Sure.
is?
Sure. So typically the distributions to investors, if any, again, real
Right.
estate has risk. We don't guarantee anything, but distributions are typically paid monthly. Okay. So monthly distributions. And then when the property sells, if you own 10% of that DST, you get your pro rata portion of any potential appreciation net of sales costs. Okay, so you're the owner of the real estate. This is different than a partnership or a REIT that many of you out there have seen and heard of, where the general partner or the REIT company will take 30% of any potential upside over a certain amount. And DSTs, it's not like that. You get 100% of your pro rata appreciation potential. Okay, so investors like that for that reason. No guarantees for appreciation, but you're not giving 30 or 40% away after some waterfall structure with the general partner or the REIT company. So, and then with the so monthly distributions, and then what was the other question there?
At what point does the trust get dissolved?
Oh yeah, the life cycle. Yeah, so typically we're seeing offerings go for anywhere from 4 to 6 years. Okay. 4 to 6 year hold period. I've seen them go as fast in my career as a year and a half. Very quick turnaround where an offer came in for the properties in the DST. It just made a lot of sense to, capture those returns and give the investors back their principal plus that gain. And then I've also seen offerings that went for 10 plus years. Okay. So it's investment real estate. It's a buy and hold strategy. It's illiquid, We encourage our clients, don't buy into a DST unless you can afford to hold that investment for the full life of the program, which could be 5 to 10 years, maybe more. But on average, we're seeing it about 4 to 6 years, but it just depends.
And what if I had to get out of this for whatever reason?
Illiquid.
So there is no way.
Yeah, there's no secondary market for DSTs.
Okay.
Some folks claim that they have them. It's really pretty, it doesn't exist. And again, investors should not invest if they can't afford to hold it for the life of the program. If you think you might need your money next year, we say, hey, this isn't the right program for you. So it's illiquid, it's investment real estate, and, we encourage clients before investing, talk to your CPA, talk to your attorney, learn, get their opinion and guidance as to what you should be doing, because we can't provide tax and legal advice.
Right.
But we encourage everybody, talk to your CPA attorney, read the private placement memorandum, and you'll see the business plan, you'll see the risk factors, and you'll see all of this laid out for you. But for most of our clients that have owned their properties for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, a 5 to 10 year hold period doesn't scare them, and they understand that real estate's illiquid.
And if you do ask a CPA or an attorney and they never heard of a DST, make sure they do the research first. Because they're kind of lumping into every horror story they've ever heard, even though they haven't done the research.
Right.
And, I've done a lot of...
that's very...
Yeah. I've talked to many people, too, who have DSTs, and it's been pretty consistent that they're very happy with their investment. And then, like you said, you can't guarantee any type of, returns or anything like that. But is a DST, is it an actually security, or is it a real estate purchase?
It is a security. It's a private placement. They're typically Regulation D private placements, and they're not publicly registered on a or traded on the stock market. So they're illiquid, but it is a security. So it's a piece of real estate that is packaged as a private placement. Regulation D, which is why you have to be considered an accredited investor to purchase into a DST. So yes, it's a security. Many of our team members were licensed real estate professionals also from prior careers. However, if our representatives at K Properties are licensed securities professionals with a Series 7 or Series 22, Series 63, so you have to be properly licensed to offer these to investors. So yes, they are securities.
Well, again, if you're driving around and you fit the bill, you're at the type of the point in your life where you want to, not do trash, toilets, and what was the other one? Tenants.
Tenants, toilets, and trash.
Yeah. If you're at that point in your life and you want to reach out to Kay Properties, who specialize in these 1031 DSTs, Dwight, how do they find you?
Sure. So cut two ways. One, call our 800 number. It's 1-855-466-5927. I hope I remembered that correctly. 1-855-466-5927. And then also just visit our website. It's www.K as in kite, P as in Paul, I as in island, 1031.com. So www.kpi1031.com. And I am pulling up my site to make sure I gave you the right number. It's 1-855-466-5927.
And again, if anyone's interested in this type of model, I mean, Kay Properties is known as can you say the leader now in the DST properties?
There's no real rankings, but we're told over and over by many of the industry participants that we're, either the top or very close to the top group that works with investors offering these.
Well,
because again, this is all we do. This is what we specialize in. There's, a number of financial planners that may do this. And they're doing stocks, bonds, mutual funds, insurance, all your financial planning, and then maybe they do one DST a year, but they don't understand real estate and how it works and how it trades and what goes into it. And so we've heard of horror stories, financial planners botching their investors' 1031 exchanges or putting way too much money into the wrong type of DST with the wrong property with the wrong amount of debt. And so because we are specialists, clients will seek us out throughout the country to help them with their 1031s with DSTs. And it's very similar to when you're getting your knee or hip replacement. You don't go to your general practice doctor, even though he might be great for when you get a cold or a flu or earache, whatever. It might be your buddy from the country club, but you want to go to the specialist for your knee or your hip. You don't want just some guy this is very, very technical. The 1031 exchange has a lot of rules and regulations. The DST, there's a lot that goes into it. And so we really specialized and niched down on it, and it's been working. So
yeah,
we're here to help.
I could say firsthand that it's nothing but professionalism every step of the way, and you guys go above and beyond to help your clients. So I just want to thank you for coming on our show, Dwight.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you. And if there's anybody out there looking at that stage of your life, give us a call, give Dwight a call, or shoot us an email at easymoney@newfed.com. And like we always like to say every week, there's no such thing as easy money.
It's a new day, it's a new way. Call 877-NEW-FED-1. It's a new way.
Hi folks, it's Brian Damico, owner of NewFed Mortgage. People always ask me, what's the difference between pre-approved and pre-qualified? Well, pre-approval is a more rigorous process than a pre-qualification. It's a written commitment from a lender to extend a mortgage to you for a specific amount and time period. With a pre-approval, you'll be able to set your budget, negotiate confidently, and close faster. Typically, sellers will only accept offers from those who are pre-approved. That's why you need to call NewFed and ask about our pre-approval purchase program so that you get a real pre-approval and get on the fast track to purchasing the home of your dreams. Don't waste time dealing with big banks. Get pre-approved at NewFed today. We're local and we're here to help.
877-NEW-FED-1.
Subject to credit approval, equal housing lender, NMLS number 1881. Policy website for details.
877-NEW-FED-1. It's a new day, it's a new way. Call 877-NEW-FED-1. It's a new way.
Hi folks, it's Brian Damico, owner of NewFed Mortgage. I've met so many people who want to make money in real estate but just don't know how. They pay for expensive real estate courses and seminars and they just left more confused. This is why I wrote the book, Real Estate Riches. Take the first step and buy your first home. Whether you want to buy your first home or an investment property, I share some of the best secrets to real estate success in my new book. Just visit briandamico.com/free book to receive your coupon from Amazon. When you finish reading, give me a call so we can set up your financial financial future together. That's BrianDamico.com, BrianDamico.com/free book. Sign up and receive your free book from Amazon. Subject to credit approval, equal housing lender, NMLS number 1881. Call us, see website for details.
877 NewFed 1.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.